In this presentation, we will record a transaction related to investment income received in our not-for-profit bookkeeping problem within QuickBooks Pro, QuickBooks Desktop. Here we are in our private college practice problem. We currently have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the view dropdown and selecting the open windows list. We're first going to take a look at our objective by going to our Excel worksheet. So we're going to be on number 7 in the Excel worksheet. Number 7 then says down below that we have investment earnings received, 4,170. The amount donor restricted for scholarships is 2,270. So therefore, we have investments. We received revenue on the investments. However, some of those revenues are restricted, however. So if we scroll back up top, it's going to look something like this in terms of a journal entry type of format. Cash would then be increasing by the full amount. We're going to have investment income increasing on the income side. However, we're going to have investment income without donor restrictions or unrestricted, and then the investment income with donor restrictions, the restricted items. Posting this out then, it would look something like this. We're going to say cash up top will be increasing. So cash up in R3, I'm going to say equals, point to that 4,170. Then we're going to have the investment income. That's going to be down on the income statement. So we're going to scroll down. We got the investment income without donor restrictions. That's in R21 equals, scrolling back over to that 1,900. Then we have the investment income with restrictions. Here's the investment income with restrictions equals, scrolling over to that 2,270 and enter. There we have it increasing there. So the effect on the net income then is an increase in, well, what would be the net income number, the change in the temporary accounts, then increasing. Here's the beginning balance, increasing in the credit direction. So within QuickBooks, then you'll note here that we have the breakout between investment income without donor restrictions and with donor restrictions in two separate accounts. We also want to be able to break that out, as we can see in what would be similar to the income statement, the statement of activities, in a column format. In order to do that, as we can see here, we're going to be using the classes feature. We also would like to know more detail about the restricted items, the amount with restriction. And to break out the more detail with it, we're going to be using the jobs feature within QuickBooks. So there's going to be a lot going on here within QuickBooks. We have kind of the two-dimensional setup here. We're going to be a bit more in the three-dimensional kind of setup as we put this information into the QuickBooks system. So we're going to go back to QuickBooks. We could do this a couple different ways. Since we're going to be dealing with cash, it might be one of the ways we could do this is just go directly to the register. So we could go then to the reports or banking up top and use register, banking, and then use register. We want to be in the checking account, and I'm going to record a deposit here. I'm going to make it as of the 24th. I'm going to call it a deposit. I just title it deposit typically. I'm going to go right to the deposit item. The deposit full amount was for that 4,170. So we're going to put here on the deposit side 4,170. Then we only have one input screen and no more detail than that to enter the job or the customer and whatnot, or the class. To get that more detail, we want to use the splits item down below. So split. Now we have multiple accounts that we can enter down here, kind of like in a journal entry type of format. Now we need to set up our income accounts. Now I'm going to make two accounts just like we see here. Now we could just have one account and break it out between the restricted and non-restricted, but I like to have it in two accounts to give kind of that double check between them. So I'm going to make the two accounts, investment income unrestricted and investment income restricted. So I'm going to say this is going to be investment income unrestricted, restricted tab. We're going to have to set that up. So I'm going to set up that account. It's defaulting to an expense type of account. We don't want an expense type of account. We want an income type of account. Now, note that in a business setting, you might often choose an other income because maybe this isn't your typical format of income. We're going to put it up top in the same format as our other income accounts. It's going to be in income, which will appear at the top of the profit and loss or income statement. So we'll keep that there. It's going to be then with the account name of investment income unrestricted. We're going to go ahead and save and close that. And the amount then for the unrestricted was, without donor restrictions, 19. So it's going to be 1,900. So we're going to say 1900. We're not going to be assigning a job here because this is going to be the unrestricted component. So we don't need to break out the restriction. We will be assigning a class, and the class is going to be unrestricted. So we're going to say this is unrestricted. Then I'm going to type in this full thing again. I'm going to make this a little bit larger. It's going to be investment. Let's do that again. Income. And then we're going to say this is restricted. Restricted tab. Set that up. Once again, not an expense type of account, but an income type of account. So I'm going to say income type of account. Save and close. That 2,270 should be the correct amount. Let's double check it. 2,270 looks good. Back over. And this is where we're going to assign the job to. Now, I'm going to say that it's going to be for the donor endowment was the restriction. And so that's going to be the job it'll go to. We're going to say that the class then is going to be the will be the restricted item. Okay, so what's this going to do when we record this? It's going to be increasing the cash account by that 4,170. It's going to be increasing the investment income on the income statement or profit and loss by the 1,900 and then the 2,270. It will also be applying this out to our jobs report for the donor endowment, applying it out. So we'll check out the jobs report, and it will be breaking out, if we break out or take a look at, as we will, our profit and loss by class. It'll be breaking out in the columns of the unrestricted and restricted. Let's take a look at it. We're going to say record and say yes. Let's first take a look at our trial balance. So we'll see all the accounts by going to the reports drop down. We're going to go to the accounting and taxes, take a look at that trustee trial balance, changing the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. And then I'll change the font size and the customized reports up top. We're going to go to the fonts and numbers. Going to change the font size down below. We'll make it 11. Okay. Then yes and okay. So what happened here? We have the checking account. Double clicking the checking account. Zooming in to it. We see the deposit that we had here on the 124 for that 4,170. Zooming into that, we see a deposit screen because when we entered it into the check register, the form that was generated is a deposit form. So here's our deposit form. Closing this back out. Closing this back out. The other side on the income statement. So we have down in the income statement the investment income restricted and unrestricted. So if I double click on the restricted item, there's going to be our deposit, closing that back out, and then the other side is in the unrestricted, double clicking on that, there is our deposit there. Now let's take a look at the income statement, take a look at the income statement by class. So we'll go to the reports drop down, we're going to go to the company and financial, we'll take a look at the profit and loss by class. Profit and loss by class, changing the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20, and there we have that, changing the size, customize reports, fonts and numbers. Going to change the font size to 11 and okay. Then I'm going to say yes and okay. So then if we take a look, we have now the investment income. Now notice I've broken it out in two ways. We could have had just one investment income account, breaking it out then between the columns by class between unrestricted and restricted. But we gave kind of a double check type of item here so that we have the investment income restricted, which should all be in this column. And then the investment income that is unrestricted should all be in this column. In other words, if you had something in this account in unrestricted or in unclassified, then you would know that something's wrong, and you'd go back in there and figure out what it is and possibly just reallocate it to the restricted column. So that is that. Now on the restricted side, we don't know what the restriction was for. This is just all restricted stuff. So if we want to know, as we will, more detail about what types of restrictions we have, that's when we use the job costing. So if we scroll back up and take a look at our reports up top, and we go to the company and financial, and we want to take a look at the profit and loss by job now, profit and loss by job, changing the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. That's January through December 2020. Got to change the fonts up top Go to the fonts and numbers. We're going to change the font here. We're going to make it number 11. Okay, and yes, and okay. So there we have that. And then we have the donor endowment. So within the donor endowment, that's where that 2,270 is. Now note these are all in the subcategory of the jobs. This is going to be the total for the jobs. If I minimize this screen, then we've got all the jobs which total up to the net of that 4,619. And if we go back to the profit and loss by class and scroll down, then we'll see that 4,619 here as well. So again, this matches out back to the profit and loss by job, to the profit and loss by job if it was all grouped together, and then we can extend the report and get the more detail about the types of restrictions that we have. This report will also help us to tie out to what is on the balance sheet and what would be kind of like the equity section, and what's going to be the equity section for QuickBooks. So if I scroll down, in other words, or if I go to reports up top, company and financial, and we go down to the balance sheet standard, and I change the date up top to 12/31/20. Notice if I scroll down, let's make it large again, go to the customized reports, fonts and numbers, and I'm going to change the font size, making it 11 once again, and say yes, okay. Then I scroll down and we see here that we have the temporary restricted and the unrestricted, and then the net income, which hasn't been allocated out yet. So in order to allocate that net income out, I'm just going to go to January of the next year. I'm going to say, let's push this up. Once I refresh, this net income will roll over. I'm going to say, okay, refresh it, and it rolled over into the unrestricted. So how are we going to break out between these two? Because QuickBooks is just going to basically roll over into whatever account it's closing out into, which in this case is the unrestricted account. Well, we can use this profit and loss by job. And if I look for all the jobs that are open, so if I bring this back to 01/01/19, then we could see that the total here we're going to have for the jobs should be that 229,590. That, in essence, is the amount that we're going to basically have to break out over here and allocate between the two for the restricted amounts. So we'll do that adjusting entry at the end of the problem.